Well, hello, friends. It is Wednesday, October 30th in the year 2024. It is the day before Halloween. This is Material Issues, episode number 177. I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. I'm over here in South Jersey on the East Coast, where it's supposed to be 80 degrees tomorrow and handing out chocolate. Chocolate's going to melt for all the trick-or-treaters. 80 degrees in South Jersey on Halloween. Wow. But joining me where it's supposed to be hot, all the way from the West Coast, Southern California, Reseda to be exact, my good friend, Mr. David Bash, president of the International Pop Overthrow, who should be overthrowing some pop right now as we speak, but he's stuck at home for reasons we'll explain momentarily. David, I hope you're feeling great tonight, though.
Thank you, Mark. Right now I'm feeling okay because I'm sitting down. I'm not having to walk, but I would have been in Boston awaiting night number 1 of IPO there. But I have a back issue, which had been diagnosed as spinal stenosis, which had pretty much been lying dormant for several years. But a few weeks ago, it started acting up again, and it causes pains in my back, pains going down my legs. It feels like a shock to the system sometimes.
Yeah.
And it gets exacerbated by walking or by lifting things, stuff I would have to do to, to operate International Pop Overthrow, to travel and all that stuff. So I wasn't feeling well, and I made the last minute decision to stay here and get an MRI, which I did this morning. And hopefully I get the results soon, and maybe they can give me some sort of treatment that I can use on the trip. Yeah. Because next week I am coming into New York. My wife, Rena, will be there with me, so I feel more comfortable about it. And just hopefully I'll get something to alleviate the pain. Also, walking causes numbness in my legs.
Right, yeah. It's crazy.
Which causes me to have to sit down all the time to get the blood flowing back in there. There is definitely there's a Viagra joke in there somewhere. Do they have Viagra for the legs? Because I could.
You said it was exacerbated by lifting, so I thought maybe just doing last week's show because you had to carry John Borak through the whole show. Maybe just
John Borak's actually in Texas. He's going to be writing a book on the Penguins.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the band that.
Yeah.
The Spider Pop guys were in and still are actually operating from time to time. So John's down there. He's going to be interviewing people, including Lanny Flowers. I wish all the best to Lanny. He went through some heart procedures a few weeks ago. I've been there. It's not fun, of course. But things seem to be moving quite well, progressing in his recovery. Yeah. So,
and of course, we wish well to our friend Matthew Sweet going through all of that with the heart issues. That's been tough.
Yeah, there've been quite a few deaths lately of celebrities.
Of course, one of our favorite, Terry Garr, of course. Yeah, that.
Yeah, both music related and not. And like we always say, the older we get.
Yep,
the more they're going to be, and they're going to sometimes come in clusters. So that's never fun. Well, I just wanted to talk about one fairly amusing thing in a way. Some people weren't too amused by it. You might be able to figure out what it is. Yesterday's World Series game between the Yankees and Dodgers.
Yeah.
Bottom of the first inning, Gleyber Torres hits a. Thank you, Tim. Gleyber Torres hits a fly ball to right field. This curving foul. Mookie Betts is chasing it, and he's right at the wall, not the deep wall, but the side wall where it goes fair or foul. And he's about to catch the ball when all of a sudden 2 fans who are sitting there reach over. One of them actually tries to get his glove off his hand, and the other, and because they know he's going to transfer the ball over. So by taking his glove off, the ball can come out as well. And the other guy grabs Mookie Betts' free hand to make sure that if the ball does come out, he can't get it. So immediately the umpire called Torres out because of the fan interference. but those guys have become they're a quintessential Andy Warhol 15 minutes guys.
Yeah.
They got it. They got kicked out of the stadium. They went to a local bar where they were celebrated. Which, I, as a Yankee fan, I'm embarrassed when our fans do stuff like that. It gives the rest of us a bad name. I don't celebrate it at all. But on the other hand, when it happened, my first thought was, this could be a reverse Steve Bartman. And lo and behold, it wasn't until that incident that the Yankees' bat started catching fire. Yeah. So who knows? Maybe he inspired them, and the Yankees are going to win 4 straight.
And if they do, the guy's going to get season tickets next year.
He probably will. For now, though, the Yankees they're taking the moral high ground, and these guys were supposed to come back tonight for Game 2. They have been banned from the stadium. Oh. At first, they weren't banned, and I figured, well, maybe one of their attorneys called, and the Yankees attorneys called and said, if you ban these guys, they can sue you. And now maybe they found out, no, they can't. So it took a day. They should have banned them right away, but I bet there were some legal issues, ramifications they had to jump through. And once they did, you guys aren't coming back.
It was quite a moment, though. Quite a moment.
Yeah. Quite a moment. No doubt about it. And again, it won't be significant if the Yankees don't come back and win.
Right.
It'll be pretty much forgotten. But if they do win all 4, you can bet that people are going to attribute it to that incident.
Exactly.
Yeah. Which is as ridiculous as the whole Bartman thing, reason for the Cubs losing the NLCS that year. Yeah. But whatever. We could talk about that forever today, but I don't think we should do that.
No.
I'm sure you don't either. I think we should introduce
we got better things to talk about. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Well, this guest has a storied career in the music business. He's from, is it Central New Jersey where Plainfield is?
Central, yeah. Central
Jersey. He formed a band with a guy who's part of the power pop lore, Richard X. Heyman, called the Ascots, eventually changing their name to the Doughboys. Released a bunch of singles. Unfortunately, they didn't get a major label deal, but this did become a springboard for our guest, who went on to do a lot of solo work in the 70s, ultimately joining the band Ram Jam, who had a big hit with Black Betty, although he is not on the record, though he certainly has performed it live with the band. And in the last several years, I think 2015 and on, he's toured with the Yardbirds, which is pretty well iconic. So yeah, he's been there and done that, and he's still doing it. So I'd like to give a huge Material Issues welcome to Mr. Myke Scavone.
And there he is.
How you doing?
Tops and all. First question: were you? The spelling of your first name, Myke, who came up with that, you or your family?
No, that wasn't my family. When I first joined the Ascots, because they actually had been around for about a year. They were actually a rival band. I was in a band called the Apollos, and I was the drummer in that band.
Okay.
And a couple of the guys went to college, and the band kind of fell apart. So I was talking to Richard Heyman. You know him as Richard. I always call him Richie because he's Richie to me. He's Richard to all the pop fans. But
right.
We were in the backyard of the bass player of the Apollos house, and we were just sitting on these swings. And Richie was asking me, "Well, what are you going to do now? Those guys are going to college. The band's going to break up." And I said, "Well, I really want to sing. I really want to be out front. I don't want to be behind the drums anymore. I'm kind of tired of it." And so he said to me, why don't you try out, join us, because they didn't have a lead singer at the time. They had Willie did most of the singing. So I came over and I joined, and there were 2 other guys named Myke in the band.
Wow.
So
what are the odds?
It was like, I got to find a way to differentiate myself. And it took me a while, but I just changed the spelling from an I to a Y. Mainly, and what really inspired it was there was this band called The Middle Class.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Remember them? Long
I
Island
spelled that
band.
with a Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Danny
Oh, wow.
Manzolino, who I went to school with, actually graduated a year before me. But yeah, they were a great group too.
I was going to say that, the mid 60s was a great time to put a Y in your name. I was thinking of the Birds.
Yeah.
And of course, if you look on like Pebbles compilations, the garage stuff, lots of bands using a Y instead of an I. So yeah, fit perfect.
Yeah, that's true. That was part of the whole 60s era where things just started getting more and more detached from normalcy.
Yeah.
New normal.
And a lot of different spellings of things. Yeah, I mean, I never thought of that before, really, but that was a period when things got to be spelled with Z's on the end instead of S's, and all that all that kind of stuff.
And bands starting their name with THEE. Yeah.
Yeah, that was another. Yeah, we became the Doughboys really because that was our manager's idea. He was very much into, you guys got to have a shtick. You're a great band. You got a lot of followers, because we had a lot of followers in the Central Jersey area. And I mean, we were a high school band. We were playing every weekend because we're all in school. But we played Friday, Saturday, Sunday night every single weekend through my senior year, because I joined them the summer before my senior year. So.
Now, and I know, I mean, I'd like to go back, and see how you got into things. But while we're sticking on the Doughboys here, and when you said your manager said you need a shtick, you started dressing like World War I Doughboys at some point. Was that like, did you do that for a long period of time? And was that because of the time period of bands like the Raiders and that all had that kind of the uniform, so to speak?
Right, and there was the guys that did Snoopy versus the
Royal Guardsmen.
Oh, the Royal Guardsmen.
Yeah, all of those guys, they were all dressed up in different types of uniform. You had Gary Puckett in the Union Gap.
There you go.
So that was a thing. So he came up with this idea where, let's call yourselves the Doughboys and we'll wear these World War I uniforms. So what we did is we went shopping in all Army Navy stores, and we actually found original World War I Army uniforms that were
nice.
on stage, yeah, including the hats, which I didn't like to wear. I still to this day don't wear hats. Hats don't look right on me. But I mean, I had spats. I wore beetle boots with spats around them on stage, and it was kind of crazy. Richie Heyman still has his Doughboys jacket, his original.
Oh my gosh!
Jacket. And I think it still fits him. Mine would never fit.
He's pretty skinny. Yeah, doesn't put on any weight.
It could have been worse. It could have been like the Pillsbury Doughboy. And
is that even around? I guess it was.
Sometimes I feel like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Hardly. You look good. You look really good.
That's a great story, though. But let's back up a little bit, Mike. You grew up in Central Jersey, which is on the some of the sites of information for you. And most people don't say Central Jersey; they'll just say North Jersey or Jersey. But Central Jersey is definitely a thing and definitely a place. Younger, were you influenced? What got you into like music? What was influencing you? Were your parents big on music? Did they have a collection that you listened to a lot, or were some stories we have older brothers or cousins or whatnot that really turned people on to stuff during the 60s? So for you, it really was late 50s, early 60s, getting into a lot of that fantastic music. Yeah,
there was a lot of influence. I come from a big Italian family. I got 5 brothers and 4 sisters. One of my brothers is deceased. Yeah. So there was 10 of us. We had an even dozen in the whole family. And I definitely got interested because of all the stuff I heard all day from I had 2 older sisters and an older brother. So I was the third, 4th in line. But I remember listening to Dion and the Belmonts. I remember listening to Bo Diddley. I remember listening to James Brown, Chuck Berry, all of these artists, Fats Domino. I mean, I loved Fats Domino. Mm-hmm. It was one of my favorites back then. But all of those guys, and there was a lot of instrumental stuff kicking up at that time because kind of the doo-wop stuff was transitioning out, and then there was a lot of instrumental rock that was going on. So I was listening to all sorts of stuff. My parents were really just big, either Sinatra fans or they were listening to Caruso, big opera singer from Italy.
Enrico Caruso.
That was the kind of thing they were into. So I didn't get a lot from them, although, and this is, many people that I've told this story to think it's kind of odd, or they can't believe I'm telling them the truth, but I really got the bug because my parents, as I told you, really liked Sinatra. And so part of Sinatra was, you got Dean Martin, and then you had the Rat Pack. And it was really Sammy Davis, watching him dance around and sing, along with what I saw in James Brown. But those two guys really inspired me more than anybody.
Wow.
Because it wasn't just music that got me, it was the idea of entertaining people,
Right.
And that was really what I liked, and that's really what drew me in.
Did you ultimately become, and this is probably the most popular Italian-American band of all time, also from Jersey, of course, did you become a Four Seasons fan?
I was blown away by Frankie Valli's voice. I mean, I just, and the songs at the time, I mean, they were really good songs. They, well-written lyrics, great arrangements. Yeah, so I definitely liked the Four Seasons. But it was Valli's voice that really got me more.
Well, yeah, still performing. It's incredible.
He hits those notes. I mean, I don't know how he hit them then, but I've heard from people that have seen him within the last year, and they said they just can't believe he's still hitting those notes.
No, it is incredible. Yeah,
it's mind-boggling. But and of course, Bob Gaudio wrote one of your first singles with the Doughboys.
Everybody knows my name. Yeah,
everybody knows my name. So that had to be kind of a thrill.
Yeah, what's really funny is I went to see Jersey Boys, the play, in New York, and they don't play that song, but they talk about it in the play, which was very. We were like, hey, that's real. How come we didn't hear him sing it? But see, I came from. I was born in Brooklyn originally. So I moved to New Jersey the summer before my freshman year of high school. So I was like the black sheep. I didn't know anybody. Nobody knew me. And because of one of my sisters, Josephine, she just always loved listening to drummers on records. To her, that was like the thing. And so I wanted to become a drummer. And part of it was because of hearing how much she really dug listening to the drums, So when I came over to New Jersey and I went freshman year in high school, I wasn't playing anything yet. And so I thought, well, I'll try out for the marching band. So if I try out for the marching band, then I should be able to learn how to play. So that's what I did. And, you had to be able to read music. I didn't have a clue. I still don't have a clue, to be very honest with you. But so what they did is they had this music sheet up on a music stand in the music room. And one by one, the guys that were trying out to be drummers in the marching band would go up and play it. I got on the back of the line and I listened to what they were doing. And when it came my turn, I stood up there staring at that sheet and just playing what I remembered everybody else playing. And that's how I became a drummer. I got into the marching band. Yeah. And then probably a year later that my parents bought me my first set of drums, which was
so you became a drummer in high school via the marching band and went from there. As far as vocally, were you interested in the choir or chorus or any kind of singing in high school at all?
No, actually, I didn't even think about it until I had joined the band, the Apollos. And they basically just asked me to sing a couple songs. And I kind of liked it, even though I was behind the drums singing, I thought, wow, yeah, I'd like to see this song. And then I sang a couple of songs, and that's what led me to really wanting to get out, because at that point, you had so many of the British wave came over, because I entered high school in 1962. So a lot of that hadn't really popped yet. It wasn't for a couple of years after that all that stuff started popping over here.
But
So,
it'd be a
Did
great
the Beatles have a profound effect on you?
say that again?
Did the Beatles have a really profound effect on you and your musical journey?
The Beatles had a profound effect on wanting me to get better at music so I could have girls screaming at me.
Hey.
Outside of that, I'm being very honest. Outside of that, I mean, the band that really affected me was the Rolling Stones.
Okay.
They were animalistic. That was just the thing I saw about them. These guys are just animalistic. It's like, jungle drums, just their whole approach. They were just so energetic, and non-conforming. I mean, they were the first band that came out that really, when you think about what their hair looked like versus what the Beatles' hair actually looked like when both bands came out, light years apart. I mean, it was definitely different.
Maybe like only an inch, but light years apart. Back then, I can only imagine what the parents thought.
And very much the Beatles, when they hit, and Ed Sullivan and their DC in their first concerts, they had those collarless jackets. They had the suit and tie thing going on, and that didn't happen really with the Stones.
No, the Stones wore whatever they were wearing on the truck on the way to the gig.
Exactly. Even the early shows that you see that they were on, they were only a few months, not that much longer post Beatles, that they had the attitude of we're not doing the clean cut, so to speak.
That appealed to me a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Remember, again, the early years, people that aren't aware of the early Rolling Stones, it's amazing how many musicians I know that weren't there, because a lot of the guys I hang out with are younger than me. But I remember Jagger coming on wearing a sweatshirt that it looked like he had just been working in the yard before he got on stage.
With the sleeves pushed up, like
not exactly super clean, but they put on such a great show, because they were on, what was it, Hollywood?
The Tammy Show, I think you're saying.
Well, the Tammy Show was one of them, but there was a show.
Hollywood Showcase. What was it called?
Dean Martin had a show. It was Hollywood something. I can't remember.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I forget what it was. Yeah.
He called them the Rolling Uglies.
I know what Sinatra thought of rock and roll. Dean wasn't probably a big, although his kid ended up being in a pretty cool band.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that was Dino, Desi,
and Billy. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But what a great time to be in high school, though. Starting high school, I'm not quite at that age, but we lost Myke here a second. We'll get the connection back. There we go. He's back. But what a great time to be in high school in 1962, and just having all that happening while you're young and in high school, and it's just a happening time. And it was a perfect time to be that age with music in the 60s.
Absolutely.
Because you were then if you were high school at 15 at 62, I mean, through the rest of the 60s, you were barely into your early 20s till you got through all the 60s. And I said, what a great time.
Yeah, actually, I graduated high school at 17. I was the youngest in my class.
Wow. Yeah. But still pretty awesome. Now we have to ask you. You got into your high school bands, the Apollos, and then you merged with the Ascots. And did the Ascots? Some of the online stuff written about you guys being one of the most popular bands in Central Jersey for a few years and playing a lot. And it talked about you opening for various acts. And David and I were kind of talking before you logged on pre-show. Henny Youngman.
How
in the world did that happen? Yeah.
Well, what's crazier about that? It was a high school dance. It wasn't a high school dance, although it was mainly high school kids there. But it was a dance at St. Mary's Church. It was in the basement of the church in Denellen, New Jersey, right?
Oh, Denellen, yeah.
Yeah, and we're just, waiting. We did one set, and then they brought this guy on. Nobody knew who he was because it was still early 60s. Well, it was 65 when I joined the band. So it was actually right before my senior year in high school. So it was around 65. But he comes out and he's playing this fiddle and he's telling these jokes, and then he says to me, I'd like to take a vacation in your hair one time.
And I'm sure your hair was shorter than it is now, too.
Not a lot. Well, yeah, it was probably a little bit shorter back then.
65, probably, yeah.
By the time I graduated, though, my hair was down past my shoulders. There wasn't one other person in high school who had long hair.
Wow.
When I graduated, it was the weirdest because I had the whole cap and gown, and I went up there, and everybody else clean cut, a lot of jocks and stuff. And I walk up on the stage, and you could hear this murmur go throughout the whole audience.
Oh,
it
wow.
was just crazy. But I just had a good time, knowing that I freaked out a lot of parents.
That is the badge of honor for sure. Now I got to ask you. I read that you guys opened for the Hassles, and I don't know if you remember the show at all, but if you do, did you guys? Pardon?
It was in Staten Island outside.
Did you guys look at Billy Joel and say this guy really has something, or not at all?
It was kind of funny. We liked the band, but Billy Joel was just playing keys then. He wasn't actually singing. They had a singer, and this is a funny story because, talk about what a small world we live in. They had a singer. Matter of fact, Richie told me about this guy. So they had a regular lead singer. Billy Joel just did backgrounds and stuff like that. He wasn't really the lead singer when we played with them. And Richie goes into the locker room to use the men's room because there was no place else to go. It was a high school, but we were out in the field. It was an outdoor gig. And he comes back and he tells me he goes, I can't believe it. That one band over there, which was the Hassles. And I didn't know anything about any of the guys in the group. He goes, that guy, he's like warming up his voice, but what he's doing is he's got a towel and he's screaming into the towel at the top of his lungs, and he's warming up his voice. And I'm thinking, man, that's gotta hurt, So I kind of like had that in the back of my head, and I didn't think much about it. But when I joined Ram Jam, because they were looking for a lead singer while they were doing the first album, Black Betty was already done. Me and Bill, the guy that sang Black Betty, we kind of split half and half on the first album, singing leads. But I meet Howie Blauvelt, the bass player. We were talking one day, and he asked me what I was playing, what other kind of stuff I did. And then he mentioned, I was in this band, the Hassles. Now, the name hadn't stuck with me from when we played with them, right? It goes, we had this lead singer that used to scream into a towel when he warmed up his voice. And as soon as he said that, I said, no. Did you play outside? And I mentioned some of the other, I can't remember some of the bands that were there, but it was at a high school. And he goes, I said, we played with you guys. We were at that concert.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and how funny is that? It was just so crazy.
Yeah, it's small world stuff, man. And of all, we've interviewed so many people here, over 177 episodes, and you run into that all the time. It's like, I just happened to be wherever they may be and ran into, and it all just kind of, it just kind of happens, And,
we've talked with a lot of, we've had as guests a lot of acts from back in the day. And one of the things we love to ask them is, how did they get their record deal? But if the Wikipedia page here is right, you guys won that Battle of the Bands, and the prize was a contract with Bell Records, which is awesome because I love that label. Is that pretty accurate? That's amazing, actually.
Yeah, that's how we got our first contract. And the other part of the prize was we got to open up for the Beach Boys. And if you've read Richard's book on Boomerang, I had a little encounter with Dennis Wilson.
I read about that. And, we got to hear more about this. This is amazing.
And just so you know, David is a huge Beach Boys fan. So this is a particular
We had
interest.
Stephen Gaines, who wrote a book called Heroes and Villains about the Beach Boys. He was our guest a few months ago. It's a great book. It's kind of a tell-all, but they didn't have your story in there. I wish they had. So go ahead. We've got to know about this.
Well, nobody tells that story as good as Richie does. I mean, Richie just has such a way with words, and the way he explains the whole thing, it's just so funny. If I had his book here, I'd just read it right out. But we were the opening band. There was us. Who was the band that had it's a kind of dress? Susan.
Oh, Buckingham's.
The Buckinghams. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So they played after us, and then the Beach Boys were on the bill.
And this was from winning the contest.
From winning that contest, yeah. So it was the other part of the prize, along with the Bell Records contract. So I don't know if you've ever seen the band. We used to do this song called Bo Diddley. Actually, we did it a lot. But if you go and look, I could probably send you a link if I think about it. If you remind me, I'll send you this link to when I was with the Apollos. That's how long I've been doing this song. And there's no sound because it was one of those 8mm things, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's all they had back then. It's the 1960s, 64 World's Fair. Was it? Yeah. I think
It was there. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's actually, and we were wearing these suits, but we were playing Bo Diddley. So that's actually the first footage of me. And what we did with Bo Diddley is I would come out from behind the drums with my floor tom, and we played out the beat with maracas on the floor tom, because that was the way, Bo Diddley, if you listen to his songs, those maracas were just so heavy in the mix,
Yeah.
And so we're playing it like that. And when I joined the Doughboys, we started doing that song again, and then Richie would come out. So me and Richie would both be up there with floor toms. Now I had a separate set of legs made that were a little bit longer, so I didn't have to bend over so much when I was playing on the tom, right? And so I brought the floor tom to the gig with the Beach Boys, and I forgot to bring the legs. So we're like, oh, what do we do? So we asked the Buckinghams if we could use their drums, mainly just to use the floor tom for one song. And they said, no, man, the drummer doesn't want to use this stuff. So then we talked to one of the road managers for the Beach Boys. And he was like, yeah, sure. Dennis wouldn't care. He's fine with that, And this was a pretty early show that we were doing. It was at the Mosque Theater in Newark, which was known as Symphony Hall too. And so the way we worked it out is we did our set, and there were curtains, because it was back then curtains were still being used on stage. And so we had it worked out with the guys that were running the curtains and stuff, that as we were ending Bo Diddley, we would start fading it out, and they'd slowly bring the curtains down on us. That's how we wanted to end our set. So we're out there doing that, and we're just blaring away on the drums. And all of a sudden, my maraca hits the side rim on the drum. And I'm using Dennis's drum, right?
Mm-hmm.
This thing all of a sudden shatters, and there's smoke all over the place, because those all kinds of dust inside, like choking. So I turned the maraca around, and I just started using the handle, to try to finish the song. We were near the end. Next thing I know, somebody grabs me from behind and lifts me up and throws me down.
Whoa.
All of this cursing, you motherfucker, and just screaming, don't you ever fucking do my drum like that. And I didn't know what it was at first. I didn't realize it was Dennis Wilson. When I first felt the arms grab me, I thought it was just some crazy girl that ran up on the stage, because we used to have that stuff happen when we were playing. And then all of a sudden I realized, oh, that ain't no girl. It just turned into a bit like a wrestling match, a bit of a tussle.
Wow.
For a while. And then all of a sudden, the curtains are still open, just starting to close. Amazing. And there's this rumble going on between me and Dennis Wilson, laying on the floor of the Mosque Theater.
But, what came of that then? I mean, I would think you stuck around for the Beach Boys show. Was there any more talk between you and Dennis afterwards, or anybody else involved?
No, what happened was their road crew guys and other people. I mean, here is some girl, I don't know, must have been one of their girlfriends or wives, I don't know who it was, just yelling, "Dennis, stop it!" when he jumped on me. And so the road crew came and just kind of pulled us apart and dragged him backstage. And afterwards, one of the guys, and I can't remember who it was, said something to Mike Caruso, our bass player, basically apologizing for Dennis, and said he was a little bit drunk. You know, it was pretty early in the afternoon, but apparently he was, and I didn't realize, because I wasn't at that point in my life. I was straight as an arrow.
Oh wow!
Believe it or not, I had. It wasn't until I didn't smoke my first joint until graduation night.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so that was the first time I got high.
Especially in the '60s. What a late bloomer! Holy cow!
Oh, yeah, it all went downhill from there. I never liked drinking. You know, drinking never appealed to me.
No, you really don't hear that too much of that. You don't hear that often from musicians, that's for sure.
Well, you know, I grew up in an Italian Catholic family, and it was.
Oh yeah.
It
yeah.
Was
there were rules. Yeah.
You never did run into Dennis Wilson again?
No, because it wasn't much after that he passed away. You know, I mean, that was. Well,
he passed away in 82, so.
Oh yeah, well,
83.
I ran into him.
Yeah. So you win a recording contract with Bell Records, which is your first or the single. We wanted to ask with this Rhoda
Mendelbaum.
Is that a real person?
Who wrote that?
I don't know. A guy named Tony Bruno wrote this song.
All right.
He wrote it with some other guy, another guy from New Jersey too, as a matter of fact. And I've been contacted by his son, not Tony's, but the other guy. And he always tells me how his father rewrote or co-wrote the song with Tony. And so it could have been a real person. But if you listen to the lyrics, some of the lyrics are pretty funny, especially towards the end where he's yelling out, "Rhoda Mendelbaum, going steady with Howie Kirschenbaum."
Well, and I wanted to ask, I mean, were you not writing your own stuff at that point? And so that's why you chose to do 2 tracks that were written by other people. Not that Bob Gaudio is a bad guy to choose a track from, but
no, our contract was, and this was pretty typical back then. The record labels would match you up with either a producer or arranger or something of that sort. So they matched us up with the Jerome brothers, who actually had "Ding Dong, the Witch is Dead."
Oh, the Fifth Estate, yeah.
The State, yeah.
And they went on to Left Bank too.
Yeah, Walk Away with Meg was. So they had a couple big hits with them, and so Bell Records hooked us up to them, and they picked these songs for us.
Okay.
Nobody was really writing songs. Richie started to write songs a little bit after that, actually. And actually, we were supposed to put out an album. We put out Rhoda Mendelbaum, and then we put out Everybody Knows My Name, which they had it as a pick on the cover of Billboard magazine.
Oh, wow.
Box, one of those two, I can't remember. It was a long time ago. But I just remember having a little box on the cover of one of those magazines. And but it never really got any play. It was just.
Well, that's a typical story back then.
Yeah,
I mean, I collect a lot. I collect 60s 7-inches, and so many bands got only 1 or 2 records on these major labels, and never did get to release an album. Which, they only gave them 1 or 2 shots of the singles, and if they didn't catch on, then that was that. Unfortunately.
Yeah, we had a falling out with our manager.
That doesn't help.
which because he was the one that connected us to the Amy Mallett Bell Records. We're on the Amy Mallett Bell. And then he also was pretty close with the Jerome brothers. And we were stupid, to be very honest with you. I mean, I was 17 years old. I was the oldest guy in the band. And we just didn't know what we were doing. And we made, when I look back on it, we made some stupid mistakes. We listened to the wrong people at the wrong time, you know. Things could have gotten better. But I think, you know, for us as a band, we had a certain style of music, you know, and it seemed like they were pushing us more towards pop. It was the interesting thing is the Doughboys were from 64 to 68, and the Yardbirds were from 64 to 68. And it was the same kind of thing. When you think about why Clapton left the band, it's because he felt they were just getting too poppy, you know.
Right.
And that's really what happened with us is we were all kind of let down, kind of discouraged by the fact that we couldn't play the kind of stuff we wanted to play, you know. So it just didn't work out.
Have those two singles, any of those sides, been comped on anything? Are they on any compilations?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. There was an album called Garage Bands of the 60s or something of that sort that Rhoda Mendelbaum was on it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then when the Doughboys reformed, which was later, and that's a whole crazy story in and of itself. But when the Doughboys reformed, our last album that we put out, because we put out six albums and a live DVD as well. But when we put out the last album, it was called Running for Covers. I had always wanted to do an album of just covers because we're doing all our own stuff, you know, and just wanted to give props to some of the bands, you know, from the day, you know. And so everybody in the band threw in what they wanted to do, what their favorite songs were, and that's what that was. But we, just for fun, we redid Rhoda Mendelbaum and Everybody Knows My Name.
Oh, wow.
We covered ourselves. So
that's too cool. So by what, 67, you then were out of the Doughboys?
68.
68. All right.
Actually, what do you think? No, it was the summer of 68, right before. It was at the end of 60. It was the end of the school year of 68 that I fell out of favor with the band.
Was that because they wanted to go in a more pop direction and you didn't?
No, they actually wanted to go. If you remember what was happening back then, you had the Beatles, you had the Stones, you had the Animals. You know, a lot of the bands were 4 or 5 guys with a lead singer. And then all of a sudden you had the Who, which were 3 guys with a lead singer. And then you had Cream, which were 3 guys, no lead singer. And then you had Hendrix, which were 3 guys, you know, and the guitar player did the singing. So they wanted to go that direction. They didn't want to have a lead singer anymore. They wanted to just do a lot more jamming, you know, because that was what was going on, you know, 45-minute solos and all of that stuff. So they basically just started rehearsing and not telling me that they were rehearsing. And
oh, geez.
Yeah, it was not a very good. It wasn't nice. Let's put it that way.
And where do you go? Where do you go at that point? Now you're finishing up high school.
I was out by 66.
All right, so you're out of high school.
Yeah.
What was music the only thing you're doing, or you just working whatever you work? Yeah, all right, you're working.
And at that point, I was working at a greenhouse, which I worked after school every day. And then so I'd work at the greenhouse till about 6 o'clock. Then I go home, take a shower, and I would walk from North Plainfield to Plainfield to rehearsals with the Doughboys. It was about a 3-mile walk, and I'd be walking in my Beetle boots.
Mm-hmm.
Just, if you saw my feet today, you'd understand what happened.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that had to be tough.
So, but I was that driven. I just loved playing with the band. I loved everything we were doing. So when I fell out of the band, I just kept working at the greenhouse. There was a greenhouse that I worked in, which was like a wholesale place. And then there was a retail greenhouse across the street, and another friend of mine worked at that, and we had fields of hemp growing.
So it wasn't entirely green, but
No,
yeah.
no. So, we had, and then what happened is the place across the street, this is the craziest thing. They had this mound, probably about 15 feet wide on the bottom, that kind of was like a pyramid, just this giant mound of moss and mulch and all of this stuff. And he had this pot plant growing out of the very center of that thing. And I'm telling you, that thing must have been like 9 feet tall.
A beacon.
And it was there forever. It was just the craziest thing. And all of a sudden, one day, Joey comes across and he goes, "The cops just took my plant. Get rid of your stuff." So I'm running around because I had mine outside all over these fields that we had. And they were growing I ran through the place pulling stuff. It was just crazy. So that's basically what I was doing. I got very heavily involved in drugs at that point. And I would jam with different guys here and there. But for me, it was like playing with the Doughboys was all I really ever wanted to do. I didn't want to play with other bands. And I told somebody this, when I was in Ram Jam, it was great. You had this song that was, it got bigger in the 90s and it's probably bigger today than it was when we first put it out in the 70s because it got blocked. But all during that time, I was wishing it was the Doughboys.
Wow.
I'm serious. And it was because there was something that we had. It was like it was just the right mix of people.
Right.
And it always felt right. We were just such good friends, even though they weren't real friendly at the end, but we were good friends, And
what was Richie doing during this time? Were there any talks about getting back together in some way?
No, because I actually would just go to see the band every time they played, as a trio.
Wow.
They were phenomenal. They were just really good musicians, and I didn't want to play with anybody that was less of a musician than those guys, And all the other bands that I knew that, I would try out for, just wasn't
Wow.
there,
But even post Doughboys and into the 70s, you worked with some decent name people.
Yeah. Well,
How'd you meet Bo Gentry and Richie Cordell, who were mostly known for writing Tommy James and the Shondells hits?
All right. Well, what happened with that is myself, Mike Caruso, and Richie started another band, and that was after the Doughboys actually broke up. So it was around 60. I'd say it was probably late 68 or early 69. It was probably around the spring of 69, now that I think of it. And I was living in New Brunswick at that time. And so we were rehearsing in Plainfield, and it was a band called Cool Heat. And the way we got the name, it was kind of weird. We were given the name because there was this song, Bo Gentry, Richie Cordell, Kenny Laguna. They would put out these records. They would just have studio musicians do stuff. Right. They were working with who's the guy that did Knock 3 Times on the Ceiling?
Tony Orlando.
Yeah. So they would just put out and put different bands' names on those things. Wind was another one. That was Tony Orlando.
Oh yeah. A lot of the records I collect are those kind of projects. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had this instrumental that was basically a harmonica instrumental, and with the band playing behind it, called Grooving with Mr. Blow. And they needed a band to go out on the road to tour with to push the record a little bit. We did the Upbeat show in Cleveland or in Cincinnati. It was just, so we just went out and we were doing all of these gigs at all these little bars in the Midwest, not big venues, but the song was getting played, but it wasn't real big. And so they asked us to do this. So that's how we got the name Cool Heat, because that's what that went out as. So we're doing this thing, and then right then is when Richie started writing a lot. And so we, Bo Gentry said I don't know, it was our manager at the time was a guy named Barry Landers, who passed away like last year. He was a furniture store owner in Plainfield. His furniture store was right next to Gregory's Music, which was like the music capital of Plainfield at that point, you know. Yeah. So it was just funny that we got to meet him, and he brought me in to meet Bo, and Bo said he wanted to come out and see the band, to see what the band was like. And it turned out that he wasn't interested in the band, he was interested in me. So he wanted just to have me as a singer, and I did put out a couple singles with him, which didn't go anywhere either, you know.
These were on Epic, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
God, I gotta find this stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what Bedrock. That was the name of the band, Bedrock. And so, you know, Bo always liked to, you know, come up with these ideas. He always had ideas. He had more ideas than anybody I ever knew. He was the funniest guy to work with, I should say. He and Richie, we used to call them the sideways guys, because they used to take these things called Secasonitan. They were pills.
Okay.
And what they do is they were uppers that had downers in them.
Whoa.
So you went both ways at the same time. And I remember they just used to have these things on all over the console in the studios. You know? And obviously
they talk about athletes with greenies. I'd never heard of this.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've been around the block or two, and uppers with downers in it. I've never heard that phrase.
Yeah, it was just, I went over Richie Cordell's house one time, and he had this jar, like it was like what you would put pennies in. It was loaded with these pills, full of all of these pills.
Yeah, you used to be able to get like some of these pills at the back of magazines and things. You could send away for this shit. I don't even know how it was legal.
Well, they knew a lot of the right doctors.
Oh Lord,
Bo's girlfriend Mona, which was everybody thought was the inspiration for Moni Moni, but actually it was kind of half and half. But Bo went past and he saw that MONY. There was a bank.
Right.
Mutual of New York, I think it was.
Yep.
Company. And he just started singing Moni, 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 you know, when he saw the sign. And that's how the song got started.
Yeah.
But then he started putting in things about his girlfriend in there.
Right.
Mona Lowe was one of the most beautiful women that I'd ever seen. and it was crazy. Anyhow, so that's how I got to know Bo. And I did a couple singles with him. And now, talk about a small world. When I first moved out here to Austin, Texas, me and my wife, married 44 years.
Wow.
Well, God's been good to me. Let me tell you, good to me. And she's one of the best gifts I have.
Oh.
But we went to a restaurant. We didn't know where we were. I mean, we didn't know nothing about the area. You know, we were just checking out stuff. And we're actually a little bit northwest of Austin, of the city of Austin, which is kind of gone through. It's gone up and it's gone down, but it's the live music capital of the world. There's a lot of great music here.
Yep.
But anyhow, we're at this thing and we're waiting for a table and we're sitting, and they had this like little bench table with, you know, stools, and we're sitting there just, you know, drinking wine and stuff. And some other people come in. This one guy that looked really big, tall guy, and he's in there with some other woman. And so we started talking to them, mainly because this guy looked exactly like my wife's uncle. And he even talked like him. He laughed like him. It was so weird, you know. So we got to be friends with him. We went over to their house like a week later. You know, they invited us over. And I'm just talking to them about, you know, being in the Yardbirds, and I had given them some Doughboys CDs and stuff. And we're talking music, and all of a sudden, out of the clear blue, this woman, her name was Lisa, she says to me, you know Bo Gentry? And Richie Cordell? I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm not even here for like a month at that point. And this girl's asking me if I knew Richie Cordell and Bo Gentry. And I'm like, wait. How do you know who they? And apparently she had hung around with them during the 70s. We never passed. Yeah. But it was just so funny, you know.
Oh yeah, small world stuff.
Insanely small world, yeah.
Now I gotta ask about Ram Jam. You know, we hit on it lightly. Go ahead, Dave. You
no. Before that, I just want to know, how'd you get hooked up with Ben Vereen? Now that first Henny Youngman, then Ben Vereen.
Ben Vereen, and this connects to how I got involved with Ram Jam. I was after Cool Heat broke up, and I just started doing things with Bo. I met this guy named Steve Tracy. Now, Steve Tracy, this guy's had a voice like the guy with that real deep voice in the Righteous Brothers, Bill
Medley, yeah.
He has such a powerful voice, and we started this like country rock band. And because they needed a drummer, and I wasn't doing anything at the time, you know. Cool Heat had broken up, but Bo and Steve were doing stuff together, and he was recording Steve. So me and Steve got to know each other and got to meet each other, and they were looking to put a band together, and they were doing stuff with Tony Orlando at the time, and they were backing up some of his records, but they weren't really doing much of anything, and they needed a drummer. So they asked me if I'd join, and I was like, yeah, why not? That band, we had 6 guys that could sing lead.
Wow.
And phenomenal freaking harmonies, just phenomenal harmonies. And that was the first time I'd ever been in a band that actually had harmonies. Right. It was all, you know, hard blues rock stuff, you know?
Yeah. And
so it was that band that got me. We were studio musicians at Kaznets and Cat Studios because they were these songwriters that they just needed people to play on demos. That's how I got in Ram Jam, because they came when they were looking for a lead singer for Ram Jam. All they had at that point was Black Betty, which Bill had been doing with some other band for years before we did it, and a couple of other songs that Bill had written. I think 1 or 2 other songs that Bill had written. That's all they had recorded at the time, but they were looking for a lead singer because they wanted somebody that had a little bit stronger rock voice, you know. And so they asked Steve, and Steve just had a 2-year-old kid at that time. And he's like, well, what's it entail? Do they have to travel? And they said, well, yeah, we got to get you guys out on the road, you know, because Black Betty was already starting to hit, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So the album wasn't done yet. So they asked Steve, and Steve said, no, man, I can't do that. They were like, why don't you ask Mike? He sings that kind of stuff. And they were like, Mike, the drummer, he sings. So they had me try out, and they had some songs that they had some tracks for that were written by some other guys. And so that's what I did. I tried out for some of these songs, and then we re-recorded the stuff, and they were some of the songs that came out on the first album. And so that's how I got in the band.
Wow.
And you were there on singing most of the songs on the first album, except half of them, except Black Betty. Then the second album, Portrait of an Artist, the artist is Young Ram.
Most of them,
yeah.
There's a backstory to this, and I don't know how involved you want to get in my.
We love it.
In my dreaded background.
We love it.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
You guys got seatbelts? All right. Here's the nitty gritty. That band moved, Sauce, we were called, the country rock band. We moved upstate New York because one of the guys in the band, this guy Greg Kroll, was going to go to Albany, New York. I forget which school he was going to, but he was going to Albany. He wanted to be a doctor. And he turned out to be an incredibly well-known eye doctor. But at any rate, he was the guy that was writing a lot of songs for us at that point. So we were doing a lot of cover stuff, but we were doing a lot of his stuff. And I'll tell you, man, this guy wrote some great songs. Why we never got him out. That was really the problem. We never actually got him out we never even finished an album. That was the problem, you know. But we were upstate New York and we were recording with people up there. Now, my drug habit became a real habit because I wasn't just smoking pot. You know, I went through a long period of time after the Doughboys broke up where I was just working different gigs and, you know, doing open mic stuff and crap like that. And I was doing a lot of acid. And one time I did way too much acid.
Wow.
I couldn't get my brain to shut off. And I was living with this girl in Plainfield. That actually, she was the girl we ended up living with in New Brunswick right before I joined Sauce. And I was like outside of myself. It was just the craziest thing. I actually ended up punching one of my best friends for no reason at all.
Oh, no.
And I wasn't a violent guy. I mean, it wasn't who I was. So the girl I was living with, her name was Claire. She played banjo, 5-string banjo, and she could play that sucker. But she could also take the engine of your car apart and put it back together.
Holy cow.
And she was an artist. She went to Ducray Art School in New York. And, you know, when I met her, I was like, who is this girl, you know? And I was totally against any kind of hard drugs. And, you know, I didn't consider LSD hard. It was psychedelic. Right. And most of the time, you know, back then, right around that time, because it was 69, 70s, a lot of people were going from acid and then they were doing speed, and the hard drugs were starting to kick in a lot of places. And that's what really destroyed the whole hippie movement at that time. But I came home from work one day and she was loaded. And I'm like, what the heck? What are you doing? You know, I thought maybe she did some downers or quaaludes or something like that. And excuse me. Turns out, she told me she skin popped some heroin.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, are you kidding me? And I was really pissed at her, you know. And she kept saying, well, you ought to try it. It's not a big deal. It's not what everybody says it is, you know. So I just had so much respect for her that I thought, shit, if she can do that and do the stuff that she does, I should be able to do that. And so I tried it. And that's it. Problem is, I've got an addictive personality. You know? And make a long story short, because this took years before I actually became an addict. And we had moved upstate New York with the band Sauce. And I met some guys up there that were literally bringing me bags of heroin for free.
Holy crap.
These guys had so much of this stuff. And that's how I actually got strung out, because I was getting all this free dope. And again, make a long story short, I ended up getting busted under the Rockefeller laws. Now, if you understand the Rockefeller laws, mandatory sentencing for anything over an ounce of heroin or cocaine or any hard drug, right? Well, I used to go to Nogales, Arizona, cross the border into Nogales, Mexico, and bring it back across the border. So, and I wasn't like dealing on the street or anything. It was just me and my friends. That's all it was. And it was really just to keep my habit going. And I'll tell you, it is the darkest place you can ever live. But you know, it's funny. I didn't see it then, you know, because I was out. You know, I didn't realize just how this thing had really owned me, and it did. And so I ended up getting busted. Now, under the Rockefeller laws, you have to do mandatory sentencing. I had an A1 felony, which was 25 to life, no plea bargaining. We were not allowed to plea bargain.
Wow.
So this is why I tell you that God's been good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents First, I had to pay this lawyer $10,000. My parents had to put their house up as collateral because I had a $50,000 bail. I didn't have any money. I was a musician. I was a drummer, even worse than being a musician.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard that joke. You know, what do groupies and drummers have in common? They like to hang around with musicians.
Yeah, they like to hang around with musicians.
What did the drummer get on his IQ test? Saliva.
What's the difference between a bass player and a pizza?
Don't know.
It can feed a family of 4.
There you go.
That's too good.
Yeah.
That's too good.
Long story short, I don't know how and this is why I just say God has been good to me. And I could tell you a whole lot of stuff that would probably make skeptical believers out of you if I told you half of what happened to me. But somehow, under Rockefeller laws, I had an A1 felony, mandatory 25 to life. You could not even go up for parole till you hit 25 years. You had to do 25 years before you're eligible. Somehow, my lawyer got my 1.5 ounces of heroin that I got busted with reduced to 1 methamphetamine pill, and it was an A3 felony. So I had a 1 to life sentence because they were all life sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So I did 1 year and 4. It took 3 years rather, for this to go through the courts. Got thrown out at one point completely because the judge that signed the warrant only signed the warrant because I had threatened his nephew, because his nephew broke into my house and stole a whole bunch of stuff. I'm telling you, I really should make a movie about some of this stuff.
I could think.
But so he signed the warrant, not because he had anything on me, but because his nephew was involved. And I think my lawyer used that, to get the judge, to drop all of this stuff down. So anyhow, I got a one to life. I did 3 years through the courts. Okay. And the way it got thrown out of court, the prosecutor got pissed, went to the Supreme Court of New York and got it reinstated. And it was somewhere in there that they got my A1 felony dropped to an A3 felony.
Wow. During
that time was when I joined Ram Jam. So
I can't even.
I mean, was this hanging over your head like every minute you were?
Oh yeah, the whole. I mean, because it was probably 1 year after I got busted that Sauce broke up. Well, Sauce didn't break up at that point, but they kind of broke up because I moved back to New Jersey, and that's when I got the gig with Ram Jam. And I was a mess because I was still strung out, and, trying to hide, going to rehab and faking.
So you did 1 year plus.
I did a little.
But you ended up in a rehab. That's how you dried out from everything, or did that not straighten you out? No.
No. If I told you that story, I'm just going to give you a brief. What happened?
The Cliff Notes. Yeah.
Yeah, the Cliff Notes. While I was in jail, my fiance, who is now my wife of 44 plus years, had started going to this church, and she gave her life to the Lord. And I thought, she came and she started telling me about it, and she's telling me all about Jesus. And I grew up, I was a Roman Catholic. I heard all the stories. I knew all of this stuff. And I told her exactly what I thought. I said, Margie, you know what? That looks real good on paper, but it don't work in real life. And that was exactly what I thought. And I scoffed at her for a long time. I finally get out of jail. It took me about 3 months after I was out in order to get my parole transferred from New York to New Jersey. I go get transferred to New Jersey. I'm still shooting dope. She's not very happy because she's as straight as an arrow all of a sudden. And I'm looking at her life and I'm thinking, what the hell, man? This girl's life really changed, And let me tell you, we were, who was it? we were the wild couple. I mean, if you ever saw that movie with gosh, I can't think. I'm trying to get through this all.
Yeah.
But anyhow, we were just as wild a couple as you could ever imagine. I mean, and she just all of a sudden was different. And it just made me start thinking. I started reading the Bible, and I started seeing things that I didn't think the Bible said, and it actually said. And she basically said to me, I'm not going to marry you as long as you're doing drugs. You know, you can come to church with me if you want to, but we're not getting married. There's no way. And so I would have to shoot dope to get straight enough to go to church with her, because when you're strung out, you're in pain if you're not getting high, you know? And so all I wanted to do was just be level, you know? So I'm shooting dope. I'm going to church with her. And this was what would be known as a charismatic church. Not only were they very outgoing in how they worshiped, but they believed in, and again, if you have any understanding of what the Bible says in the New Testament, especially, what they call the gifts of the Spirit. There's what they call words of knowledge, words of wisdom. But anyhow, when I was working on work release with my brother-in-law, I put my back out. I had a pinched sciatic nerve. It's really, really bad. So I'm sitting at church one day, and what part of this operating in the gifts, while they would be singing songs, and in between the songs, if somebody had a word of knowledge or a prophecy or something like that, they would just speak it out, right? So I'm sitting there one day. You can remember, I'm shooting dope to go to church with her. All of a sudden, this Jewish guy that had converted to Christianity ended up being my best friend later. But he gets up and he's like, you know, the Lord is telling me that there's somebody here with a pinched sciatic nerve.
Whoa.
He wants to heal them. First thing I did, I looked at my wife and I said, well, she wasn't my wife yet, but I looked at her and I said, you told them, didn't you? And she's like, no, I didn't tell them. Matter of fact, I didn't tell them anything about you except that I had a boyfriend in New York. And I talked with some other people later. She never told them anything about me, just that she had some boyfriend in New York who was kind of this mystery person, and they weren't even sure if I was for real because she was so embarrassed by the fact that I was in jail and a work release and shooting dope and blah, blah, blah. So I'm looking, and they're like, you know, so we want whoever it is to respond because the Lord wants to hear you. So I'm sitting in my chair, and this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking, this is total bullshit. I know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to go up there, make believe they got a bad back and they're going to get healed, and blah, blah, blah. You know, this is my attitude. So I'm sitting in there, and one of the elders, which is one of the main guys that, you know, runs the church, he's like, we're not here to play church. We're not going to continue until the person that God is speaking to comes forward. And I'm sitting in my chair and I'm thinking, this is weird, because all of a sudden it's just total silence.
Mm-hmm.
They stopped singing. They stopped everything. And this guy, this one girl gets up and she goes, well, you know, I've had some back problems, you know, but I don't think pinched sciatic. And the guy goes, no, this is definitely not you. The word very specific. Somebody with a pinched sciatic nerve. And now my back was so bad that if I sat down, when I got up out of the chair, I could not stand straight.
Mm-hmm.
The pain was so insane.
I'm going through something very similar right now.
I'm telling you, man, it is not fun. It is not fun. And obviously that fed my addiction even more because of painkillers. So I'm sitting there, and finally I thought, after about 10 minutes went by of total silence and nobody saying anything except the lead elder saying, we're not going anywhere, you know, until whoever it is responds. So I thought, I'll go up there and they'll pray for me and it'll just prove it's all bullshit. Because I was convinced I'm going to prove this is all bullshit.
Right, of course. Yeah.
So I go up there, I walk up, and now there were two guys, there were two elders that were running the meeting at the time. One guy was on my right, and he had his hand on my shoulder, and the other guy was on his right. And so they each had their hands on their shoulders and on my shoulder. And I'm standing there, and they start praying. And I was like, as God is my witness, well, and he was, all of a sudden, I start feeling this heat right where the pain was in my back, right? And I'm thinking, what the heck is going on here? And so the first thought in my head, because I'm such a skeptic, when we were in high school, we used to have those flip lighters, not but it would open up. And what we used to do is we would like light it and have the thing half cocked. We'd get it real hot and we'd burn each other with it.
Wow.
We did a lot of crazy stuff like that. So I'm thinking that this guy must have lit his and he's holding it against my back, right? But then I realized his hand's on my shoulder. There's no way he could be getting to the other side of me. And then I realized this isn't on the outside. This is on the inside of me. I'm feeling this heat. And the heat just got more and more intense. And then they stopped praying. And I was like, I didn't know what just happened. And I just walked back to my seat. So long story short, I eventually, well, I'll tell you exactly how I got clean. The way they had their service set up, and you could edit this out if it's boring you, but the way they had their service set up, they would have worship, which lasted about 40 minutes of just singing different songs and all of this other stuff I was telling you about, the movements of the spirit. And then they would have a break for about 15, 20 minutes. Now, during the break, they had coffee, they had bagels, they had donuts, they had cake, they had all this stuff that you could just sit there and, kind of hang around fellowship. And so I'm standing there talking. Now, this would probably have been going to the church maybe 3 or 4 weeks at this point. And this one guy who had seen me get prayed for, and the pain in my back didn't completely go away at that point, but eventually did. And I was in bad shape as far as my back. So anyhow, he's talking to me and he's like, "So Myke, what's keeping you from becoming a Christian?" And I'm like, you know what? And I had not talked to anybody honestly at that church from the day I went there. And I just said, "Look, I'm a heroin addict. And I just don't think God wants to have anything to do with me." I said, I went to jail for what I do. I put myself through withdrawal dozens of times. I went through rehab and faked my way through it because I just wanted to get high. Everything I did, even when I got clean, I couldn't stay clean for more than a couple of weeks. And I always went back to it. So the only thing I could think is that somehow God will use me as a bad example to keep other people from doing this. This guy looked at me in the eye and he said, "Myke, that's a lie. God doesn't want that for anybody." He said that, and I just felt something snap inside of me. And I can't explain it because it wasn't physical, it was spiritual.
Right.
And from that moment on, I did not get high, and I didn't even think about getting high. And one of these days I'll go to rehab, but I've never been to rehab, and I've been clean since 1979.
That is one amazing story.
Yeah, but it's
Congratulations.
So
when I went to jail, Ram Jam fell apart.
I was just going to say we've learned that Ram Jam kind of came out of Kaznitz and Cats, which is very bubblegum everything, which
thing they had was the music explosion. Exactly,
and you didn't get into Ram Jam and basically until you landed yourself with the heroin jail, which brought you to a religious awakening moment, which got you clean.
Yeah, kept me.
I just mean that just didn't that cliff note that I just said in 45 seconds is enough to make everybody go, which is an amazing story, Myke. And thank you for sharing that. That was really strong.
Well, I'd be a traitor if I didn't share it because that's the reality of what happened.
Absolutely, and I mean not to applaud that, but it's very strong. It's very powerful, and I thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
And it's certainly a story that I'm sure I'm not going to hear from anybody else. That we're not going to hear as a guest on our show.
Probably not.
But let's follow on from Ram Jam, and your next really step is getting involved with the makeup of the Yardbirds, and starting to be involved with their tours.
Well, no, actually, the next step after Ram Jam was the reunion of the Doughboys.
Oh, the Doughboys. The Doughboys back. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Forget them; they were key.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I'd be a traitor again if I did not recognize that if it wasn't for the Doughboys, I would probably not have gotten anywhere in music.
Right.
Because I honed my chops in that band. And, you know, the band drove me because they were all so freaking good. And so what happened with the reunion of the Doughboys wasn't supposed to be a reunion. It was supposed to be a one-off. I used to go and see Richie with he had different guys every time I saw him play. And he was playing around New York City. So I was actually, believe it or not, I was pastoring a church at the time, because my conversion and my relationship with the Lord got so strong that they gave me a small congregation pastor. So, but I would go in to see Richie, and we'd hang out and talk and stuff, you know, and a couple times he asked me to come up and, you know, just sit in, you know, and we just became really good friends, you know, and I'd never really thought about going back into doing anything with the Doughboys. I had started playing drums again with a couple of guys that were doing cover stuff and doing weddings and doing Elks clubs and stuff like that. But it was like the only thing I was doing in music at the time. I literally, when I first gave my life to the Lord, I just swore off of music completely because I knew I was afraid it would bring me back
to
where I was. And so what happened is I got to be friends with a lot of Richie's friends, and especially his wife, Nancy. And one day I get a call from Nancy, and she's like, "Do you think you could get the other Doughboys together?" And I said, "Yeah, I see them all. You know, I saw seeing Mike Crusoe and Willie Kirchhoffer." And I said, "Why?" He goes, "Well, it's Richie's birthday's coming up, and I think I could get us this club where, you know, it's a surprise. We don't want Richie to know." So I said, "Well, okay. Let me talk to Willie and Mike, because I knew I could just play drums enough that we could get some songs together, right?" Because Richie was the drummer, I was the singer, but I could sing from behind the drums because I did that for many years. So I got together with those guys, and what we did is we just took our favorite 10 songs that we used to play back in the day, and we rehearsed them. So we would have a set of songs, and she got Arlene's Grocery.
Oh yeah.
Soho. They gave us an hour or 45 minutes to do a set on a Sunday night, like 7 o'clock, before anything kicked in, you know, before the rest of the bands would actually come into play.
Yeah.
And so she brings Richie in on a sign that says the Doughboys. He doesn't know anything is going on, right? And we get on the stage, and he's like, what are we doing? I'll call the songs out and we'll do them. So I would call the songs out. We did stuff. We did a couple of Yardbird songs. I'm a Man was one of our favorite Yardbird songs. Yeah. Lost Woman. And we did, we got a Good Thing Going. The Stones version of it early on stuff. And I don't remember all the songs that were on the list, but it was 10 songs. And we did this, and that was it. That was supposed to be all that we did. You know, it was Richie's birthday, surprise party. See you later, you know. And the guy at Arlene's Grocery asked us if we'd be willing to come back and do a set some other night. So we were like, yeah, okay, can we do the same set? And he's like, yeah, that'd be fine, you know. So that's what we did. And then when we were there, Manitoba. Do you remember Manitoba?
Yeah, Handsome
Manitoba.
Yeah, Handsome Dick Manitoba. He had a place on Avenue B.
Yeah, his bar. Yeah, Manitoba.
That's right. So he was there when we played at the Arlene's Grocery set the second time, and he asked us if we play at his bar. So we played at his bar. And the next thing you know, we're playing at the living room, and we're playing at all these different bars in New York City. And we had never really intended to get back together. And yeah, I guess it was 2000. No, yeah, it was 2000 when we had August of 2000 that we did that show for Richie. And we started doing stuff, and we started recording with Kurt Ryle.
Right.
Us just recording cover stuff because we hadn't been doing any original material at that point. Willie was still playing with us, and we were mainly wanting to get some demos out to try to get gigs in New Jersey, and some other places. And that's the only reason why we were recording. So what happened is a few years, like 2004, I think it was, we were just playing around doing these different gigs in these little small clubs. And Willie got sick and died. So somebody, this friend of ours, Danny Caruso, recommended Gar Francis to us. And when Gar came in, I mean, he was such a perfect fit. I mean, his style, everything about stage presence, it was like he was in the band all along. There was almost no time that it took for everybody to feel like he had always been with us.
Wow.
And one of his things was, at one time at rehearsal, he says to me, "Why aren't you guys writing your own music?" Because Gar's whole thing since he was in high school, he just wanted to be a songwriter. He really doesn't love playing live. He loves writing songs and having other people do them. So that's what we started doing. We just started writing songs together. Richie would take and bring some of his songs that he had put out on other albums, which I already knew because I loved this Richie stuff. I always loved Richie stuff. Yeah. So we put out the first album we put out, which was called "Is It Now." There was a few of those songs on that album that were the demos that we did with Willie, that Gar did some overdubs on, and we cleaned up some of those tracks because they were done live, completely live. So there was a lot of bleed and stuff. And if you listen carefully, you can hear some of it. But and then we did Black Sheep. And we did one of Richie's songs, "Out of the Night," I think was there wasn't many originals. It was mainly a lot of covers on that first. Might have been three or four originals. But anyhow, Little Steven, we sent it to him. He picked up Black Sheep, and that became the coolest song in the world. And we were like, we didn't even know what the heck was going on. So all of a sudden we all bought satellite radio sets.
Yeah.
And it was great.
And here's a tie-in with you, Mike. So Black Sheep ends up being the number 2 overall coolest song of the year of 2008.
Right.
On my label, Pop Detective, I had the number 6 overall song with Vivica Sagastad's "Tonight."
Huh.
So you and I are 4 positions away, like how many things away from Kevin Bacon type of thing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Then the following year, you've got "I'm Not Your Man," which ends up number 3 of the year, and I had number 7 of the year the following year. So 4 positions away with the Yum Yums, "Too Good to Be True." So you and I were on a parallel course in 2008 and 2009 with everything you were doing. So I was highly familiar with everything the Doughboys were doing as I'm watching what's happening with Little Steven's Underground Garage. So
yeah, he was picking other stuff off of our albums that I guess some of the other DJs were playing. The funniest thing that we still to this day don't understand, he picked "Shaking Our Souls," which we put out in 2012, as his favorite album of 2012.
Right, yeah.
Wonderful.
He only played one song off that album.
Yeah. It still was his favorite, yeah.
But then later on, they started playing him because then they started. I think, what the heck song did he play? It was the one that Mark Lindsay actually played saxophone on.
Oh yeah, what was that? Crap.
Crying Shame. Yeah. So and then he started playing "Shaking My Soul," which was the song I wrote. That was ended up being partly a title for the album. We couldn't come up with anything. And then he was playing some of Richie's stuff. I can't remember. There was another song that Richie wrote on that album that got a lot of play. Clock Strikes Doom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which.
Yeah. But none of that happened until later. You know, it was like the whole year that this was his favorite album. He didn't play anything except that one song. And then all of a sudden he's playing a bunch of other stuff. But there was never another cool song off that album.
Well, Stevie has his way. I mean, I'm very grateful because with my label, I've had 18 coolest songs in the world on Underground Garage with a lot of different artists. And so I'm very grateful for his support. And obviously, you know, if it hadn't been for Handsome Dick and then Steven get you know, the Doughboys would have been most likely without too much airplay anywhere, maybe WFMU or something like that. Bill Kelly and those guys, Black Hole. But you know, really, really grateful. And
I have an accidental connection to Steven. I told you about this music festival that I do. One of the places in which I do it is Liverpool at the Cavern Club. We've done it there for 20 years now. And because I've brought over 2,000 bands over those 20 years to play the Cavern who wouldn't have otherwise, they decided to award me with something that very, very few non-musicians get. That's a brick on the Cavern Wall of Fame.
Wow.
So in May, I was awarded the brick. We had a little ceremony.
That's awesome.
I don't know if you can see, but if you look where my hand is, that's my brick. Do you see who's right underneath it?
Yeah, right underneath it.
Right underneath mine.
So funny.
Stephen Van Zandt. Yeah.
I'll tell you another small world connection. Do you remember an artist named Dina Regine?
I don't.
No.
Okay. She happens to be Little Steven's wife's best friend. And she actually did have a cool song. It was a really cool bluesy type song. But anyhow, I met Dina when we did a show at the Electric something or other, the Bowery Electric.
Bowery Electric.
Right? We did a show with Mark Lindsay, and the Gripweeds were backing up Mark, and so we were part of working with the Gripweeds, doing background vocals and harmonica and stuff like that. And we did our own set. But Dina Regine was there, and I had only known her by name. And the reason I knew her by name was because she was our drummer in Ram Jam's girlfriend for a long time.
Oh.
So here she is, our drummer's girlfriend and Little Steven's wife's best friend.
Another small world thing. Holy crap.
Yeah, so much ties in. It's ridiculous.
It is. It's just totally ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to take my leave. My back is starting to act up again. I need to lie down and stretch out. So,
David, you
carry you through.
Yeah, you go and lay down, man. You take it easy. I know you're hurting, but
but
thanks.
I can show you how to do hamstring stretches that will make a big difference.
That's where I'm gonna have to probably go to therapy, and they'll probably tell me how to do all that.
Yeah, I could show you, but not here.
Thanks. Myke, it was wonderful meeting you. Your stories are very inspiring, and hopefully we'll cross paths somewhere.
I hope so. Yeah, I'm not done yet.
I'm sure you're not.
And we hope David is not done either. So
no, I'm not done.
Yeah. That's right.
All right, we'll take.
We got a long way to go.
Yep.
My mom made it to 102. So
there you go.
All right. See you, David.
All right, man.
He's gonna go.
Yeah.
There we go. So I mean that's thankful to a Little Steven for everything he's done and really kind of
that guy. I mean, our second album, he picked 3 coolest songs in the world.
Yeah.
We were like beside ourselves. We were like, I didn't think you were allowed to have more than one off of one.
And satellite radio at the time was just really kicking off at his station, and to get that kind of airplay in constant rotation, and which is then not only just on satellite radio as far as you get your own little satellite radio, but airlines were using satellite radio, lounges were using it, so you're getting heard all over the place.
I heard it's on JetBlue one time.
Yeah. It's amazing. And now today he's got that station that plays nothing but coolest songs.
Yeah,
which is friggin' awesome, And the artists that he's got on there are they're just wonderful. He really gives them, and of course the tie-in with FMU,
right?
With Bill Kelly, they're playing all this stuff a lot. So yeah.
Well, he's got all those other FM stations that play his show at night on Sunday nights, I guess.
All the time, yeah. The syndicated stations, man, really amazing.
Yeah, we owe him a lot. There's no doubt. I owe him a lot.
No, I'm in your camp. And Steven's always been very nice to me. I do tell one story, and I don't think he would mind if I keep telling. But there's a quick story that one of my bands out of Norway that had two coolest songs, and we were going to have a third one, and the song was a little bit long. And he calls me up and he said, I need to edit the song. Need to edit the song. Now, it's the first time as a label I've heard anybody want to edit the song. I said, all right, well, send me the edit, So he edits it. He sends it to me. It was awful. I mean, the edit, he was taking things out of the middle of the song and just awful. And I immediately said no. And I sent it to the band in Norway, and they said no. And he came back to me, and I went back to him. I said no. And he goes, you realize who you're telling no to? I've edited Paul McCartney stuff. I've edited Ringo. I've edited Mick Jagger. I've edited all these people, and you're going to tell me no, I can't make this edit? Said, yeah, sorry, Stevie, can't make the edit. And didn't play that song. Didn't play anything from my label for a long time. And then I ran into him at the Hard Rock for a big 10th anniversary celebration, and he looked at me and said,
we were there.
Yeah, you were there.
Yeah,
you were there. And he looked at me and he said, you know what? You got some balls. I respect you for that. And then we were fine.
Yeah.
But I had to say no, because it ruined for us. It ruined the song.
Well, it's funny because he edited one of the Doughboys songs off the second album.
Yeah.
Our version of Tuesday Afternoon.
Mm.
It didn't, not a lot. I mean, it was a bit longer because it was over 4 minutes, and but he took out my whole harmonica solo.
That would have bothered me. That would have been like, no.
But he never told us.
Okay.
We were told that it was the coolest song in the world, and we listened to it, and we're like, hey, what happened to the rest of the song? But it was like, you know what? I wasn't going to complain.
Yeah, I know. There's the part of it where you don't want to complain and rock the boat.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like sometimes you have to. And
well, yeah,
it was one of those times. But we got over it. We talked it over, and it's been good ever since.
He's been real good to us too. I mean,
he's such a great promoter and fan and supporter of not only the little guy, but the history of music.
Documentary.
Oh yeah.
That was phenomenal. That was such a good documentary.
Yeah, matter of fact, we may have an interview coming up on Material Issues on a guy out of Toronto. I forget his name now, but he just released a biography on Little Steven. Career, so we'll get him on the show to talk about that as well. But I think the guy's just a great guy. Period.
Yeah. Period. He's definitely he's one of a kind too.
One of a kind.
He really is.
So we got all this Doughboys, recordings. Mm-hmm. The cover album's fantastic. There's some great versions on there that I love. So I want to get some information on how you got hooked up with playing with the Yardbirds, and that's kind of what you've been into to date
since 2015. Yeah.
Right. So how does that come about? Obviously Yardbirds fan, because you were playing stuff very similar to theirs way back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Holy.
We played a lot of Yardbirds back when we were in high school. Yeah. And so what happened is their tour, and this is the weird part, their tour in 2011 we got a call from this guy that had I don't know even how he had booked us to open for the Electric Prunes.
Booked the Doughboys?
Yeah.
Okay.
The year before. So we opened for the Electric Prunes at Sayreville Theater in Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And then we played B.B. King's in New York City.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we opened for both of them then. And then about a year later, he calls us and asks us if we wanted to open for the Yardbirds. And we were like, what? Are you kidding? Of course we want to open for the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
It was 2011, which was the year that Chris Drea had a stroke on stage.
Yeah.
And at the Canyon Club in California. So he was no longer with the band, but that year we opened up for them, and he had a lot of young guys. I don't know if you ever saw them.
No.
I'm talking about Jim McCarty because he's the guy that's really kept the thing alive and kept the thing alive. But he had these young guys. He had this black singer, English guy. Had this guy named Ben King. I don't know if the bass player was. I think they were all from England actually. But they were all young kids in their 20s and maybe early 30s at most. And they were good musicians, but everybody that I knew that went to see them said the same thing. The band's good blues band, but it's not the Yardbirds. It doesn't sound like the Yardbirds.
Right.
Know? And so Jim, for one reason or another, and I never really found out why, decided to drop all of those guys. He said he wanted some American musicians. And so he actually asked Gar Francis, or the Doughboys guitarist, if he knew anybody, that he was looking for a bass player and a harmonica player. And so Gar said, well, why don't you use Myke and Myke? And so Jim thought about it, and he said, well, let me go look at some of the YouTubes, because he remembered us playing with them.
Right.
But most of the time they're backstage eating when the opening band is on. So he went on and watched a bunch of YouTubes of the Doughboys, and he decided he didn't want two guys from the Doughboys. So he picked me. and then Kenny Aronson got the gig. I don't know if you know Kenny's a monster. Yeah,
very much so. Yeah.
He's such a great guy on stage. He's great stage presence.
Yeah.
He's a phenomenal player, and he's one of the funniest people I know. He really is. He's a great guy. But so me, Kenny, and Johnny A. I don't know if you know Johnny.
No.
Yeah, he's strictly instrumentalist. Really doesn't sing or anything. But he had a big hit record on AAA radio. On Renegade Nation, I think it was called. Anyhow, it was a label that the Yardbirds ended up putting their album Birdland on. That album.
Yep.
So anyhow, Johnny got to know them because of that. He sat in a couple times with them live, and so the three of us all joined at the same time. And what we had in common that just changed everything that was going on with the Yardbirds prior to that is we all grew up with the Yardbirds.
Yeah.
Me and Johnny, we just loved Yardbirds music. We just loved the whole rave ups and all that stuff, And so when we got in the band, Jim had been doing all kinds of other stuff with the different groups that he had put together. And we took over the list. We basically just started playing songs at the first rehearsal.
Right.
And Jim would just kick in. It was like he didn't say anything about what songs we were going to do. We just started kicking in all our favorite Yardbird songs, which are all, I'm a Man, Lost Woman, Over Under Sideways Down. I mean, just all of this stuff. And so the band ended up being a very energetic show.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, Johnny left the band back in 2018, I think it was. But the show is just really, really energetic.
Mm-hmm.
And, people have been blown away everywhere we play. Problem happened when once COVID kicked in, it just screwed up a whole lot of stuff.
Sure it did.
I'm the kind of guy, and some of it became my fault because I have never gotten any kind of vaccine in my life other than when I was little and had no choice, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not an anti-vax person. I don't see the point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know that our immune systems are built that with a little bit of exposure, what don't kill you will make you stronger, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
And that's exactly. I mean, I only got COVID once. Everybody I know that got the vaccines got it multiple times. You know, but you know that's not even the issue. So what happened was they had a tour set up. We do a lot. This Flower Power cruise is all 60s bands.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we would play that every other year because they never want to have the bands back to back for some reason.
Sure.
They just want to keep it, you know, different each year. And so the one right after, I guess it was 2021 because it was after I moved to Texas. I couldn't go on a cruise because I wasn't vaccinated.
Okay.
So they ended up canceling the whole tour because without that cruise, which was a big payer,
Sure.
you know, and then the following year, it was really weird the way it happened. They got the Yardbirds back for the cruise, but they still had it was 2023 because it was 2 years later.
Right.
They still had not gotten over you need to be vaccinated to be on a cruise.
Right, right.
And here's the two weird pieces of that. So they got this guy, Billy Boy. I don't know if you know who Billy Boy is. Billy Boy,
no.
Meniskin is his name. Great harmonica player. You know, played with Jim on a lot of things. Played with the Yardbirds on a bunch of the live tours that they did back before they had the younger kids. And excellent guy. You know, just I've never met him in person, but you know, I've heard him play. I've loved his music. But so what happened is he played the 2023, and 3 weeks before the freaking cruise, they decide to drop the vaccine mandate.
Yeah, of course.
And they already had the tickets for him to come over from England, and so Jim said to me, "Well, why don't you just come on anyhow?" And I said, "No, that's stupid. We're gonna have two guys playing harmonica back and forth." I mean, I said, "Look, first of all, there's too much going on," and I just 2 weeks before that, or a week before the cruise actually happened, I was just so glad that I chose not to go because I found out my brother had 4th stage cancer.
Yeah.
You know, just a bunch of stuff happened after that I was like, I'm just so glad I didn't go on that cruise because I would have felt like crap, you know, around for my brother. He was my youngest brother, actually. And he's okay. He's still going through some stuff. But anyhow, so that messed up a lot of, you know, just getting the band back on the road. And then we did the cruise last year, 2024, and I got to be on it because they weren't playing. The weird thing about the 2023 cruise, and that was the first time they did us back to back, 2024. And a bunch of people got COVID on that cruise.
Wow.
So it was like, to me, I was kind of pissed about it, but I was glad because the timing was better that I wasn't on that cruise.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So right now, what we're doing, because we play like small theaters and, you know, a lot of dinner clubs, rock clubs for the most part.
Yeah.
We were doing city wineries and stuff like that. And, you know, things have gotten, and a lot of it had to do with the whole COVID thing to begin with. I think some of the promoters got a little bit pissed that Jim canceled one of the tours after it was all booked. And so we weren't getting as many shows. Now, one of the things that we decided to do on this last Flower Power cruise And actually, the year before that, Jim was talking with Peter Asher,
right,
from Peter and Gordon.
Yep.
And Peter Asher does this thing on the cruise where he has this multimedia presentation, and he talks about his history. He talks about how Peter and Gordon got started. He talks a lot about his history with McCartney and his sister and all of this stuff. So it's a very interesting thing. It's a very informative type of thing. And occasionally he has like 3 or 4 musicians up there and they'll do a couple songs. But for the most part, it's a multimedia presentation. But over the years, Jim just turned 81 in July. And over the years, Jim kept saying, I can't keep doing this, because we're doing all the high energy stuff. And he's keeping it all together. And I'll tell you, the guy still has a lot of freaking energy for his age. It blows me away. But
well, he's eating the same diet as McCartney and Jagger somehow. I don't know how they keep their energy, in their early 80s. Yeah.
Not to mention Keith Richard, who will be here long after we're all gone.
I know.
If there ever is a nuclear war, Keith will still be here.
Yeah, he'll be the only one roaming on top the planet while we're all underground hiding. It's not bothering me.
It is an amazing thing. But Jim, so Jim's been wanting to. At times we talked about me playing drums on a couple songs, just to rest. And so he talked with this guy Keith. I don't remember his last name. And he's the guy that put the whole thing together for Peter Asher. And so they've been talking about this now for a little over a year, and they finally put together a whole script. And so what we want to do is go out as the Yardbirds Legends tour. Yeah. And where we'll just do a lot of that kind of stuff with Jim talking about the history of the band with a lot of slides and a lot of videos and a lot of stuff. And then we'll play some stuff. What we have planned right now, and we're not sure about what songs we're going to do during the course of him doing all this narrative, but we're putting together about a 6-song ass kicker medley at the end of the show, so that we're still leaving people the way we leave them now.
Sure. Yeah.
And
I think it's a good idea because especially when you talk about Peter Asher doing something that's very educational, especially for those that aren't old enough to have experienced it or experienced it close proximity. Like David and I, we were too young in the 60s to have experienced it
firsthand.
We were very young, but in the 70s, then when we were going back and discovering a lot of stuff, you still can generally, experiencing that. But a lot of young people today, they have, I talk to young people all the time. It's like, well, do you remember this band? No clue about. And the education of where this all came from, I think, is a good point. It's a good thing to do. Yeah.
You know what I think is the funniest thing? Just mentioning that, you ask people if they know Ram Jam. They don't know who you're talking about. You say Black Betty.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. That song keeps bouncing around. It just comes.
Oh, yeah.
It's been used by so many places. But yeah, you say Black Betty, it's immediate. They'll even start singing it. You know.
Right.
I do high school basketball announcing during the high school season, and I play that song. Even though sometimes people look at me because with all the woke stuff going on today, you get a little, but it's just a song. It's just a song,
Yeah.
Let it be. And, but it's amazing. Yeah. Times change. It's hard for me sometimes to realize what I talk about a lot of early 60s movies, the Technicolor stuff and the great Pacific, Sound and Music, Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, Oklahoma, and kids in their 20s, they're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And we did Terry Garr just died, and she was Young Frankenstein. She was in Young Frankenstein.
I know that.
Like,
when did she pass?
2 days ago. 2 days ago. Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. And she had multiple sclerosis, and but one of my favorite movies, Young Frankenstein.
Oh yeah.
I say that to kids in their 20s, even into their 30s. You gotta love Young Frankenstein. They have no idea. No idea what I'm talking about. And that boggles. I mean, I can't wrap my head around that.
That's classic. I mean, that's a classic movie.
Yeah. But we just have so much today is the thing. Because even when I was young and my parents would say, they'd talk about like a lot of the swing artists, they would talk about a lot of the crooners.
Dorsey.
From the 40s and into the 50s. But I was familiar with all that. And today you can still mention that and I'll be familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all we had. We only had our parents told us what the albums that our friends had, and you had the radio, and you heard it. Today, there's just so much that 50, 60 years ago, artists and beyond, there's not room for younger people to absorb that. There's not time,
Yeah. Well, if you think about how much there is. To begin with, I mean, how can you? You wouldn't live long enough to revisit everything from the 40s, 50s, and 60s, But I'm glad I did. I'm glad I've experienced it all, and that's why we appreciate you coming on the show, Myke. And a big part of what we do with Material Issues is an archival project. Mm-hmm. We love to hear the stories. We love to hear some of the nitty gritty, and especially with your story of the time that you spent through addiction and getting through it, and how you found your higher power, and you found God to help clean things up. It's an amazing story, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Well, most of my time now, in between Yardbirds tours, is spent doing prison ministry, which I've actually been doing for over 30 years.
Nice.
Going into prisons, and I'll tell you, it makes my day every time I go in. And it's a hard thing for people to grasp, but having been there and understanding, you're surrounded with so many people when you're in jail, but it's the loneliest place in the world.
Right. Yeah.
It really is. And so many people, especially here in Texas, it took me a while to get connected, but Texas is tough. This place is really tough, and there are so many of these guys that I talk to. Their families don't want to know them. They got nobody that visits them. Nobody writes them. Nothing. They're like forgotten people.
Yeah,
and it's horrible. I mean, and when you think about it, these guys are defined by the worst moment in their life. I mean, would anybody else want that?
No.
Does anybody else want to be defined by the worst thing they ever did in their life? I certainly wouldn't.
Right. No. I think it's wonderful, man. And when you say it's hard for people to understand it, but the one person that needs to understand it and gets to understand it is you, and that's because it's your life and where you're at now. And God bless you for doing that work, and I wish you many more years.
Yeah, he does bless me.
Healthy success, But Myke, thank you so much for hanging out with us for Material Issues.
Love it.
Absolutely wonderful interview. I have your email address. I'm going to drop you an email to remind you to send me the link to the Bo Diddley, not the no sound that you were going to send.
Yeah.
I'll drop you an email to remind you, and you can send that to me because I'd love to see that.
Pretty funny.
Well, Myke, best wishes, my friend. God bless. Keep doing great things, and we appreciate you being here on Material Issues. And
really appreciate you guys having me on.
If you're playing somewhere here in New Jersey, I'll be sure to catch up to you. It would be great.
I'll let you know, because we do a lot of East Coast touring. We weren't in New Jersey the last tour we did. We were in New York, and we were in Connecticut.
Yeah.
We didn't get close to Jersey, and then it was Virginia and Florida and places like that. So,
but sooner or later, you're gonna come home.
That's right.
Sooner or later, we all go home.
Doughboys reunion some point.
All right, Myke. Thank you so much. Have a great night in the rest of this year, and I hope we catch up with you soon. God bless.
Yeah, God bless you. Thank you very much.
Take care. Well, everybody, that was Myke Scavone of the Doughboys, Ram Jam. Love the Doughboys. loved Ram Jam, and of course, doesn't get any more classic than the Yardbirds. If you haven't checked out the Doughboys stuff, and if you're not that familiar, make sure you look them up on Spotify, listen to it. They've got a number of albums out. I'm sure they're all still available out there online, Amazon and through Discogs and all that kind of thing. Check them out. Great stuff. Great players. Richard X. Heyman, Gar Francis. Really good stuff. And what a great interview tonight with Myke. Fantastic stories. Really happy we had him on. And speaking of having them on, a couple of things coming up in the next month. Next week, I'll run a little banner across the bottom. Next week, we've got our good friend Dave Rave out of Canada. He was in Teenage Head and the Shakers, and with his solo material, he's played so many IPOs. I don't even think David has the complete list of. I think at one point he played a record 26 straight IPOs across the globe that David put on. So Dave Rave is one of the best singer-songwriters out there. Really great guy. But he's going to be here next Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Material Issues. Then on the 14th, we have that day open, or 13th actually. The 13th will be open. We'll probably do a Stump the Bash, or whoever knows what might pop up. But turning around on November 20th, we just booked Ron Flint and Steve Allen of the super classic power pop band 2020. Their debut album probably ranks in one of my top 10, I would say. So we just booked them. So November 20th is going to be Ron Flint and Steve Allen of 2020. That'll be at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific as well. And then beyond that, we've got a few hot irons in the fire, especially as it comes into December. We've got some cool things that are going to happen, but we don't want to announce them yet until they are absolutely solid. So next couple of weeks, some cool things with Dave Rave and Ron Flint and Steve Allen of 2020. Tomorrow is Halloween. We hope everybody has a great time. Stay safe. Do smart things. And the whole holiday season starts kicking off. So the rest of November, December, join us here on Material Issues every Wednesday. From now on, it should be at 6 p.m. If not, we will let you know. Materialissues.com is the website where you can subscribe. Tell your friends all about it. 177 episodes are now in the can. So if you can't say, thank you very much, Tim, you can't say you're bored on a night when you have 177 episodes of archived Material Issues in the bank. So check them out. But everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week. Material Issues. I'm Mark Hershberger. David, feel better. Love to Rena. Have a great night. See you.